Andy Burnham's getting off to a bad start as Prime Minister because more than 3,000 people have already crossed in the first 3 weeks, which is more than Keir Starmer experienced during his same period, his first 3 weeks as Prime Minister. We're also now seeing mega dinghies, that's the new talking point phrase for dinghies ferried across from China through Britain to France to then ferry up to 230 people at a time over the English Channel to break into our country to stay in hotels at our expense. Burnham's daily average for arrivals now stands at 130 in the first 22 days compared to Starmer's 103, according to GB News. Again, of course, it's the summer, but Starmer's first 3 weeks in power, in July 2024, saw fewer crossings at 2,628 than Burnham's. And that means that Burnham has even more thousands of foreign criminals to figure out what to do with, who are exploiting the asylum system and taking the British taxpayer for a ride. Because God forbid, of course, we just detain and deport the lot, as an increasing number of politicians and pundits are proposing. So what's his plan? Because he could just apply Restore Britain's mass deportations proposal, considering he has a massive majority and apparently the political will to bring real and lasting change to politics. Nope, instead he's going to do Operation Scatter. Do you remember this? This is Angela Rayner and former Home Secretary Yvette Cooper's proposal to ensure that every local authority in Britain gets its equitable share of illegal immigrants. The quote in here from one source was, "It's all about having a more equitable dispersal of asylum seekers. Otherwise you'll have these areas that have concentrated numbers, and that's what we got in areas with hotels and large sites. That creates a whole host of challenges, meaning services in those areas are then stretched, and those asylum seekers can't get the basic or crucial support they need, because of course the concern is for the criminal foreign men, not the beleaguered British taxpayer, who have been targeted by sex crimes whose children are targeted for sex crimes by these foreign criminals, and whose increasing tax burden is being spent on it." And I'm just particularly salty because I got my corporation tax bill through today, because I run, of course, a small family business, because it's absolutely not worth being self-employed in this country, because you get rinsed, and dear God, I am paying for the social housing of so many Somalians and Eritreans. It makes you blind with rage when you get this bill in your inbox. But first, this video is sponsored by Rumble Wallet. Britain is fast becoming the Soviet Union, where everything you say or buy online is being watched for potential wrongthink, and despite the Constitution, my friends across the pond in the United States aren't faring much better either. That's why libertarian nerds invented crypto, so you can have a say over your funds and what you spend them on. After the 2008 financial crash, Bitcoin was designed to be an alternative to banks, so that you couldn't be debanked, have transactions denied, services withheld, or funds put on hold. If you've ever been refused a bank account because you're a politically exposed person, you know how frustrating that is. Which is why the guys at Rumble have developed Rumble Wallet, to simplify your crypto transactions and make sure you remain uncancelable. You can use Bitcoin, dollar-backed stablecoins, or even digital gold backed by real gold. It connects with MoonPay, which is registered with the Financial Conduct Authority. So you can safely link your debit card, credit card, or bank account and be ready to use it within minutes. And for a limited time, you can start your Rumble wallet with $20 in US stablecoin. You can use that to tip your favorite Rumble creators, like me. Just enter my exclusive promo code Connor20 when you sign up. Rumble ensures we all have a platform to speak about the threats facing our respective countries without the fear of cancellation. They're good guys, and if they weren't doing the right thing, I wouldn't be working with them. So thanks to them for sponsoring this video. Download Rumble Wallet, try it for yourself, and remember to use my code Connor20 for $20 in US stablecoin to tip to your favorite creators. Restrictions apply. There are a limited number of entries available. Terms and conditions also apply. See the description below or visit rumble.com/promo official rules for details. And if you want to get all of my content without ads, you can subscribe to my Substack for as little as £5 per month. It's linked down in the description, and it's also where I'm posting exclusive essays and updates. Now let's get back to the video. So that's why when the Home Office says, we've closed 13 asylum hotels and returned them to local communities, you need to translate from the gaslighting here, as I did on X, that their illegal migrant occupants are now being imposed on your communities, housed 10 to a man in houses of multiple occupancy, or, per the Operation Scatter Plan X military sites near small villages, next to the neighbourhoods where your children sleep. Don't fall for it. None of our families are safe until every last one of these criminal foreign men are sent back to the third world slums where they belong, never to darken our doors. But Andy Burnham thinks the opposite. Instead, the ministers in his government are now pushing ahead with housing asylum seekers on ex-military sites. Brilliant. Have military-aged men in military barracks outnumbering 3-1 local residents in small, largely unarmed English villages. What could possibly go wrong? All right, if, of course, your plan is to destroy Britain and punish its inhabitants for the crime of being white. And now that Angela Rayner is, of course, back in her old position as Minister for Housing and Communities, that's the more important point, considering she keeps prostrating herself in mosques, then they can press ahead with this plan, can't they? They can resume the scheme from before the temporary interruption of Starmer having to reshuffle his cabinet out of various tax scandals and embarrassments. Anyway, the BBC reports that the government has promised to end the use of asylum hotels, announcing on Wednesday 13 had been closed. That was that post that I just showed you there. It plans to use former military sites with already 2 up and running, RAF Wethersfield in Essex and Crowborough Training Camp in East Sussex, where there's been plenty of protests. The 2 other planned sites are a former RAF base in Barnham in Suffolk, where there were protests last week, and RAF Linton-on-Ouse in North Yorkshire, where the area's Labour mayor said it's simply the wrong place. Demographic NIMBYism at work. Diversity is our strength, just not right here, please. And that's because Linton-on-Ouse is a tiny town where they're going to be outnumbered by the numbers of male asylum seekers. And the Home Office has also targeted a former military base in Bitchester, in Oxfordshire, to provide accommodation to 1,200 fake refugees, asylum seekers, illegal migrants who broke into the country. And the nearby village of Piddington has a population of just 400 residents. And we'll get to what the Conservative proposal for Piddington is very shortly. It shouldn't shock us the Conservatives have been betraying us for decades, given what one of their former ministers said on Times Radio was the solution for such problems. Andy Burnham, though, reveals what Manchesterism really is. Seething regional resentment. Contempt for people who have worked to get their way out of deprived areas that have been mismanaged by Labour councils, blighted by diversity and the grooming gangs for decades. And Andy Burnham said to GB News in response to the Piddington protests, where local residents have staged a vote to secede from the UK, to block this proposal, voted 96% in favour on July the 4th, and even small children have now written, of course with the assistance of their parents, to Burnham saying, please don't put me in danger by putting all of these weird, unvetted criminal men right next to my house. They do vote Liberal Democrat though, so, again, guilty of demographic NIMBYism, but I don't really care how much my fellow countrymen vote. I don't think that we should be imposing actual foreign rapists on their neighbourhoods. Anyway, GB News asked Andy Burnham about it, and he said, well, I don't know about the specific issue in detail, but in some ways, as I understand it, it's about creating secure space and not have the HMO issue that you were talking about earlier. It's not secure, they're allowed to leave the site. They've just got CCTV so we can watch them coming and going, just like they did to Deng Chong-majek when he went and killed Rhiannon Sky-White, stalking her to a train station, stabbing her 23 times, including in the head with a screwdriver. Then he went in blood-stained trousers to go and buy booze, and walked back smiling to his asylum hotel, started dancing in his hotel room, and thought the police, sirens and lights outside were disco lights. So we can just watch them do all of those crimes, and then wonder why they were here in the first place. Anyway, it's not secure, but Burnham said, it's obviously going to be challenging. Why? Why are you imposing this challenge upon us? It doesn't need to happen. But I am prepared always to listen to people, to work with people, to pick up legitimate concerns, and I will address those concerns. It's very much the Fraser-Nelson tactic in 2017. Say, I hear your concerns, while proceeding with intolerable, hated policies like mass migration, demographic change, and accommodating foreign criminals anyway. Quote, I do have to say, we cannot have a situation where it's only the poorest communities in the country that receive all the dispersal of refugees and asylum seekers. I do believe all parts of the country need to work to play their part. It's a challenging issue. So, the whole of Britain will be enshittified. You are going to get your equitable share of diversity. It's funny as well, I was on a Lotus Eater segment talking about this. I put this segment before I actually went on the podcast, but I thought I'd discuss it on my own channel as well. It was pointed out that it's interesting how they always frame it as diversity being our strength. Think of the food and the clothing, how Britain was absolutely nothing before those charitable souls sailed over on the Empire Windrush to build the NHS and reconstruct Britain out of pure rubble that they couldn't do in their own countries. But then, the moment we talk about the asylum system, it's a burden, it's a challenge, we all have to take our fair share, we all have to share the load, as that infamous scene in The Lord of the Rings just, lives rent-free in my head. It's funny how, diversity is our strength until it's a punishment. And again, those nations know it's a punishment because anytime you complain about immigration, they go, well, it's your fault for colonising our countries and giving us the wheel and water and the rule of law. Sorry for, stopping bride burning, I guess. Probably wasn't worth it, was it? They also sent Anna Turley, the Labour Home Office Minister, on the media rounds. If you don't know who Anna Turley is, she's been promoted to Burnham's cabinet because she's a former director of Hope Not Hate and Hope Not Hate's charitable trust. So we should probably expect her to have this line on the asylum system. But again, she decided to say on the BBC and on LBC that this is about fairness, this is making sure there's distribution around the country, and this is about a more fair and equitable system that limits the impact on communities. It really does sound like Animal Crossing speak after a while. That wah, 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 wah. Asked about a potential influx of asylum seekers 3 times larger than Piddington's population, she said, well, I suppose they're not going to be in the village. They're going to be contained in a former military base. But pressed on whether asylum seekers would be free to leave the site, she said, they will be allowed out, but everything they need will be on that site, so they'll be managed, they'll be contained. Well, not everything they need will be on that site. As Edwina Currie, former Conservative minister, pointed out, in fact, those men are enticed over to our country with promises that Britain is basically an open-air brothel. I mean, I helped break this story back in 2023 to GB News. At the time, it was Algerian and Moroccan customers targeted by people smuggling gangs, with footage of British women and girls filmed without their knowledge or consent, from low angles, dressed immodestly by Muslim standards, alongside images of churches burning, barbed wire fences being cut, and men earning copious amounts of money in lavish hotels or as delivery drivers. Essentially saying, if you come to Britain, white women are willing and waiting for you. And it's still going on, by the way, that the Daily Mail, late last year, revealed that there is a people smuggling network still using this footage, this time targeting not just men from North Africa and the Middle East, but also the Gujar ethnic community in India and Pakistan, filming videos of unsuspecting women on British university campuses being approached by brown men, which is selectively edited to cut out their disgust at being approached by them, and instead insinuates to these third world men that are just desperate to get close to white women because they've been one-shot by pornography, that if you come over, these women want you as their husband. They're taking a photo with her. He must be farming his Izzat, Tsar. And so this is being promised to men who are paying people smugglers, thousands, via the Islamic Hawala finance system, to come over to our country. These are the expectations being set for them by the criminal groups that the government knows are bringing them into the country. And so, are there women on these military barracks? Well, it turns out that the proposal for this Bitchester site, under the subheading, who would reside at the site in the proposal, if deemed suitable, the site would accommodate single adult males between the ages of 18 and 65 who applied for asylum. So it's all men, and it's going to run for a minimum of 10 years. So we are stuck with these people until 2036 at the minimum. Why? Why are we just a grain silo for foreign rapists? Because clearly, Andy Burnham and Anna Turley thinks it's a great idea to do that. Again, it's not like we don't know their intention ahead of time. So it's not like they have everything they want. They're not going to be secured to the site despite being literal criminals. Not just, sex criminals, frequently, but the fact they broke into the country in the first place and they just said the magic words, I need to claim asylum, which they were told to say by taxpayer-funded charities like Care for Calais, whose middle-aged female employees are in this for all sorts of sordid reasons of their own. I've seen enough videos on my X timeline of proof of their essentially safari intentions. It just means that every single day is a bad day to have eyes, alright? I'll spare you it also because it's against YouTube TOS. But anyway, look, we know this is why they're coming over. We know that they're coming over to prey on our women and girls, who they have been promised by Islamic people smuggling gangs. And this results in endless examples of sex attacks. Here's just a few Afghans, because Afghans are disproportionately responsible for this kind of sexual crime. So here's a former British Army translator, one of those, who served the British Army. Definitely we needed to import them by the thousands after their MOD leak and just, give them billions in taxpayer cash and give them free reign in our country. So this is a taxi driver called Abdul Nabizada, another name that I never needed to say to describe my own domestic politics, but thanks to the horrors inflicted upon us, I've now got to pronounce these Star Wars languages. He picked up a 19-year-old passenger after a night out in November 2021. He then stole her mobile phone, drove her to a secluded area of Joppa near Edinburgh, where he sexually assaulted her. Nabizada continued to deny his guilt, and they always do, and defence lawyer David Taylor told the court he came to Scotland after working for the US, Danish and UK militaries, primaries and interpreter in his homeland of Afghanistan. So we've basically plucked this goat herder who betrayed his own tribe and dropped him in our country and expected nothing to go wrong. The court was told he currently has indefinite leave to remain in the UK and has applied for British citizenship. Why are we allowing foreigners to get British citizenship? It should be something inherited. It is currently being devalued. Why do we have indefinite leave to remain? Revoke it, expel everyone awaiting it. They shouldn't be here in the first place. We didn't want them here, they don't need to be here, they're taking our money, taking our kindness for weakness and preying on our friends, sisters, mothers, daughters. Taylor said Nabizada is now concerned about the possibility of deportation in light of his conviction. Oh, you think? Well, don't worry, this government's so pathetic he probably doesn't have to be afraid of it. Judge Morris said he'd taken into account the number of positive references submitted on behalf of Nabizada ahead of his sentencing. So the justice system thinks, oh, you know what, there's been a lot of, character testimony in his favour. Never mind the fact that he abducted and sexually assaulted a 19-year-old girl. He also said the fact that Nabizada had no prior convictions and was a family man with 4 children matters. Again, that means nothing. They care about their family, their tribe, their ethnicity, their prosperity. Getting away with crimes against us. They do not have universal morals. They do not have transferable values. You do not understand them. They shouldn't be here. But Andy Burnham's policies means that thousands more will, and they'll be housed in military barracks next to your tiny little village. Judge Morris then sentenced Nabizada to 7 years in prison and placed him on the sex offenders registry indefinitely. Deport him immediately, and all of those just like him, including these men. Another set of Afghans raped a woman at knife point in Barking Park and threatened her friend. Nurullah Amzai, 26, and a second teenage defendant, who can't be named for legal reasons, attacked the woman on the 16th of August 2025. They're currently denying the charges. The lawyer is trying to defend them by saying the woman asked for money and then complained that she was underpaid. The woman broke down while being cross-examined by the barrister, Emily Culverhouse, and the court had to adjourn. There was an agreement that you would have sex with both men for £70, she asked the woman. Of course, the woman who was attacked said that's not true. She said, one of them was pushing me against the ground so that I couldn't move. The other person was on top of her. One of them was grabbing her legs, and one of them tried to kiss her. Culverhouse said, you complained because you wanted £500, and then the lawyer pressed. You said you would call the police and make things bad for them. If you are defending these men, I don't care if you appeal for the cab rank rule, you know it's wrong. What you're doing is making these attacks more likely, and they're not Englishmen, so they should not be afforded the same legal standards as us. They should be put on the first plane and be sent back to where they came from, and that would be considered a kindness compared to what they actually deserve having done these attacks. There was also a Afghan grooming gang who groomed a 17-year-old girl with vodka and cigarettes before assaulting her, and then fled the UK in the back of a lorry. This is 4 Afghans, 3 of which are depicted here, one who can't be named because he is a 17-year-old boy. This is Safi, Amdazai, and Habikay, and they left the UK in December, concealing themselves in the back of a lorry, at which point they were discovered by French authorities in Calais, and they were found guilty of grooming and serious SA in Bristol Crown Court in June. All 4 men are going to be sentenced on the 6th of October. And then there was another one. Again, just an endless example of the kind of men that Andy Burnham thinks should be housed in military barracks near your family. This is Afsar Safi. He previously worked with the Taliban. He was sentenced to 2.5 years in prison, just 2.5 years, after a jury convicted him of kidnapping and assaulting a 7-year-old girl at a government-funded asylum hotel in Acton in West London. He disclosed that his asylum application stated he'd been associated with the Taliban from age 10, speaking through a Pashto interpreter which we had to pay for. He offered his explanation for his actions. I wonder what plausible reason he would give for abducting and assaulting a 7-year-old. Quote, he said that he likes children and she was a child. He asked her where she was going. She said she was waiting for her mother to go shopping, so he kissed her to her face, kissed her out of love for children. Back home, all the people do that. I believe him. Send him back there. And then to top it all off, in July, Mohammed Yassin, a former ISIS fighter, decided to come to Britain because he didn't like it in France, and saw a viral TikTok saying that the UK supported human rights and welcomed asylum seekers. Well, he's not wrong for thinking that we'd just let anyone in. During his time in ISIS, he attended beheadings and public floggings in Iraq. He then fled to Germany, where he was convicted of terrorism because of his links to ISIS, funnily enough. Despite being expelled from the country for 20 years, He was not deported to Iraq and didn't want to return there, so he came to Britain. He was told on TikTok that the UK respects human rights, so he entered our country on a small boat with about 80 other migrants in December of last year, and then was sent to live at the Crown Plaza Hotel in Basingstoke, where he was arrested on Christmas Eve after his fingerprints revealed his identity. He's now been jailed for 2 years and is at risk of deportation upon his release. Why are we not just deporting him immediately? Why have we got to hold him in prison and force the British taxpayer to pay for his bed, his halal board, and his ability to attend mosque 5 times a day? Why don't we just stick him on the first plane back? Because of human rights. He said he required an Arabic interpreter in court, which we of course had to pay for, but then the prosecutor, Mr. Stephen Malloy, confirmed that he'd heard him speaking English, only switching to Arabic when he realised he could be heard. Between 2011 and 2014, he was also accused of the rape and murder of a boy in Iraq, but was not convicted. So we clearly have an epidemic of serial sexual predators and terrorists coming into Britain via small boats from Afghanistan, Eritrea, Iraq, Iran, Sudan, and a bunch of other third world countries. But don't worry, Andy Burnham's government is going to make sure that they can come in through new safe and legal routes instead, bypassing the dangerous journey across the Channel. It doesn't change the fact that they're still of absolutely depraved moral character, though. And, okay, who can sponsor them? Well, charities and faith organisations, including an Iranian propaganda outfit. So, the Home Office has given the Islamic Centre of England, based in Maida Vale, powers to sponsor visas for skilled workers and religious ministers. Because what, of course, Britain needs is more imams that are in favour of the Iranian regime. The centre is the subject of an ongoing investigation by the Charity Commission. The centre was flagged this year for hosting a community bazaar where vendors sold items including pro-Iranian regime keyrings and Hezbollah-themed phone cases. Not my first merch choice. They won't be in my store if I ever decide to set up one. Stickers featuring the silhouette of General Qasem Soleimani, the head of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps that Trump vaporised on the tarmac, were also for sale. When Soleimani was killed in a US airstrike in 2020, the centre held a candlelit vigil. Saeed Hashem Mousavi, an imam and the centre's incumbent director, described protesters against the Iranian regime as soldiers of Satan. The charity is not the only organisation with visa powers that has alleged links to the Iranian regime. The Islamic College in Willesden, North London, is also on the official register of sponsors. The organisation was founded by Saeed Reza Ameli, a former secretary and current member of the Supreme Council on the Cultural Revolution, and the Islamic College was reported to have been affiliated with Iran's Al-Mustafa University, which has been sanctioned by the US Treasury and accused of being an engine of indoctrination. Why are these people in my country, let alone able to sponsor visas? The college, apparently, claims that the Telegraph's accusations are unfounded. Now, again, the Telegraph has made a lot of stuff up about me over the last few months, but I'm actually kind of inclined to believe them on this one. The Home Office spokesman said the Islamic Centre of England hasn't sponsored any workers since 2022. Don't care. Why are they in my country? Why should they ever have been able to do so? Though, if I suggest that, the Telegraph is, of course, going to call me racist for suggesting that Muslims aren't as British as you and me. Other places that have been able to sponsor skilled worker visas are more than 1,900 small high street businesses, including mini-marts, vape shops, car washes, all of the dodgy business fronts that you see in your own high street that are clearly money laundering on behalf of people smuggling networks. And despite BBC Verify investigating these last year, the Home Office still allows a number of stores that were profiled as money laundering fronts for illegal migrants to continue to sponsor skilled worker visas. A year on from the change in rules, BBC Verify found more than 1,500 grocery and convenience stores, 150 taxi operators, 100 Turkish barber shops, and dozens of car washes and vape shops are still on the skilled workers visa sponsorship register, unable to sponsor people to apply for visas. More than 100 of those businesses were added to the sponsorship list after the rules were tightened. Speaking about the visa rule change, Madeline Sumption, who's the director of the Oxford University Migration Observatory, said that if businesses were on the register before the rules were changed, they can continue to employ people they'd already sponsored, but they can't now bring in new people to do those jobs. So despite knowing these are fronts for organised crime, we let them renew their skilled worker visa sponsorship applications for their cousins to staff their vape shops. The sort of glass-eyed Bengalis standing behind the counter of a phone shop that's usually a secret money laundering front for the same illegal migrant groups that are bringing over those sex offenders and filming our girls without their knowledge to use as marketing material. And if you dare question this, if you, as part of trading standards or the National Crime Agency, decide to question this, you get threatened by these organised crime gangs. So this woman is a trading standards investigator called Mandy. She received a midnight phone call from a high street crime gang that threatened to kill her and burn her house down. She ended up having to move. This was a Kurdish crime gang that targeted her family that had been selling illegal cigarettes and nitrous oxide canisters in mini-marts, the same canisters that are discarded out of the speeding car windows of Pakistanis in their supercars bought with ill-gotten gains celebrating Pakistan Independence Day. God grant me independence from the Pakistanis that are colonising my country, please. Anyway, groups of men repeatedly turned up at her front door. Her car was rammed off the road twice. She's one of 24 trading standards officers who have shared details with the BBC of intimidation and violence they faced from these gangs running these mini-marts and vape shops that can still sponsor skilled worker visas. In testimony they shared with BBC News, they described facing extreme threats, with one officer recounting a suspect in a shop shouting, I kill you," and then threatening to rape a female officer. Sexual abuse. One officer was manhandled and forced to watch pornography, and another officer was poked in the breast. Weapons being found in shops, including axes, bats, blades, hammers, and the discovery of a gun in a car connected to one business. Attacks to officers' cars and property, with trackers put on their vehicles, reports of them being followed to work, and a car mounting a pavement to try and run them over. Why are these businesses still operating? Why are these people still in my country? Why are they bringing more in? All questions that Andy Burnham refuses to answer. The solution? Edwina Currie, the former Conservative minister under John Major's government, also his bit on the side, suggests that the government start funding brothels full of English girls to placate the men's sexual needs instead.
Edwina, I'm going to start with you, if I may. Do you think it's right that affluent areas and rural areas perhaps should take their fair share of migrants and move them out of the city?
I think you mean not migrants, but asylum seekers, which means that they are in the process of being, processed in order to judge whether they have the opportunity to stay here or not. And the numbers have been going down, and the use of hotels has been going down, because hotels are a very obvious place to be, and it can cause absolute mayhem. And of course, you get demonstrations outside. So it's something that governments really don't want to do. But yes, using old unused land that they own, former defence establishments, whether it's going to be for asylum seekers or whether it's going to be for, don't tell anybody, new prisons. That's what's going to have to happen. And does it have a deleterious effect on the immediate neighbourhood? It depends who you are, because it does provide work and it does provide opportunities for business. I mean, I'm not sure I'm going to be allowed to say this. You're probably going to shut me up in no time at all. But the obvious thing that 1,200 young men are going to need in the middle of a village like Little Piddington is a brothel. I don't think they're going to provide that. I have a feeling that's not going to be allowed.
So we have to discontinue the use of hotels because it's causing too much public outrage. So we just need to contain the public outrage and put it out of sight and out of mind. And then we need to think of the GDP and enlist your daughters in brothels for these foreign rapists. And we know they're foreign rapists because they keep coming over with the promise that they can copulate with your daughters, and then when they are rebuffed in their advances, they then take it by force. Edwina Currie knows this, and she's going, well, think of the job opportunities. I mean, Rhiannon Sky White worked in an asylum hotel before she was violently murdered by one of its occupants, after all. I'm sure that her work for the state contributed lots of GDP for Serco. Sex work is real work, especially when it's for migrants. Conservative minister. And we wonder why the Tories allowed this to go on for about a decade. We wonder why they were responsible for 6 million immigrants in 6 years under the Boris wave. We wonder why they still refuse to deport anyone to this day. And we wonder why they expect us to trust them again when they get a second go in government. She tried to defend her remarks in the Times, and the defence is just laughable and ludicrous. She's saying that, of course, if you put 1,200 men in any place, there's going to be problems. Okay, don't put them there, send them home. The Conservatives, of course, told the Times, these comments do not reflect the view of our party. No, they just reflect the policies that you've been practising de facto for decades. I'm a moderate. I don't think we should actually recreate the conditions of Weimar Germany with the impoverishment of our country, its invasion by an occupying military force, and the sale of women and children into essentially sexual slavery in brothels to placate those occupying soldiers. And I don't think Edwina Currie should want to either, because of her family background. You'd think that she would know that Weimar conditions end in rather unpleasant Weimar solutions. And I am a true moderate. I would like to avoid both of those scenarios, thank you very much. And so my proposal is just deport all of them. Remigration. Every last one. It is the humane, moderate solution. Much more palatable than sacrificing our women and children as cattle for foreign predators, or whatever other dark, resentful proposal that Andy Burnham's government has waiting for us.